Hi, I'm Pam Bailey. I am host of Voices Unlocked, which is produced by More Than Our Crimes. And our purpose is to bring some of the voices in federal prison out to you so you can see their humanity and also be a little more familiar with the conditions that they're facing inside. And my co-hosts today are Tyrell T. Peters and Darnell Keys. We're going to be talking about a subject. Is actually this podcast episode and then the one that follows is sort of a series on some of the issues regarding reentry. That people who are in prison, who are close to the door, as they call it, close to getting out, are starting to think about and worry about. And I have several that I'm talking to now, and they're just spinning in wheels a little bit, just worrying about what to expect. So the topic we're talking about today is commonly called halfway houses. The Bureau of Prisons calls them residential reentry centers. And not everybody, like T, did not go to a halfway house, but a lot of people who are in prison will go out and before they go out into the community and start their normal lives, they spend maybe up to a year.
Yeah, they basically just finish out their sentence in a halfway.
Yeah, in a halfway house. So you may be wondering what that is. And T is currently working at a DC organization called the DC Justice Lab and has been researching halfway houses. And I'll have you sort of summarize for our listeners and our viewers what is a halfway house supposed to be? We're going to be talking about reality in a little bit, but what's the mission? Why were halfway houses created to begin with?
Well, they're supposed to serve the returning citizens that are returning home to be able to just reacclimate themselves in the communities and to serve as like a bridge between being incarcerated in the community. And they're supposed to offer resources that a returning citizen needs. Those resources include helping them find jobs, helping them find housing in the future, and also abiding by whatever rules that they have to abide by in the halfway house.
I mean, in a way, I always sort of think about it like when I left home for the first time and went to college, it was a way to be independent, sort of, because I lived in a dorm and I had all these university services around me. So actually, a lot of the guys I talked to, they look forward to going to the halfway house. And in fact, they usually want as much of it as they can, not just because they're getting out of prison. They're excited about getting out of prison as early as possible, but also they do see it as a way to uh, get assistance getting on their feet.
Yeah, just get on their
before they're really on their own.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So you're going to hear a lot today from Darnell, who just came out of the halfway house as a DC resident. I want to make it really clear, like right up front, that all halfway houses are different. They're not all. You're going to hear some pretty negative things about a halfway house experience that did not meet the expectations. But because halfway houses are under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Prisons, but they are operated under contract with the BOP, either by a commercial enterprise or by a nonprofit. So um, as a result, the experience can be really different from place to place. And that's actually one part of the problem, is you sort of wonder how much they're really being monitored and how much they're really sort of on their own and no one is really governing them quite the way you'd like them to be governed. But and in this, I'm going to be playing a soundbite from someone you've heard in a previous podcast episode. His name is Alexander Penn. And he is still in prison today, but he was out once before. And he spent time in 2 halfway houses in Ohio and actually had a pretty good experience overall. Although you'll also hear later that
Probably because you said Ohio.
Oh, why, yeah. But I mean, you will hear later that the area of housing, it was like nothing, no help there. But let's listen to what Alex has to say right now.
The establishment was nice. Man, it wasn't like a 5-star hotel, but it was very comfortable. it was not chaotic. Secondly, the people who worked there were people who understood that they treated us like regular people. They didn't take on the air of authority like they were some type of police officer or correction officer. We didn't call them by their last names. Everybody was on first name basis.
So one thing you heard in what Alex had to say that I really wanted to sort of emphasize. It may seem small, but it seemed to me that it's larger in a symbolic sense. He talks about the fact that staff treated the people who are staying in the halfway house with dignity, like you're just regular people, like that you're all in it together, sort of, and that he could call staff by the first names. And it just struck me that every time I talk to you about the halfway house, you're always referring to staff in this very deferential way, like they were your even though despite the fact that you're an adult man, they're some kind of teacher or head of a daycare center or something. So I should say right up front, Darnell just came out of the halfway house. This serves DC residents, but because DC doesn't have its own halfway house yet, we'll talk about that. Right now, people from DC go to Baltimore, which is about how long does it take to drive?
About 45 minutes.
45 minutes, which doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it is when you're trying to get to a job, and we'll talk about that. So, but let's talk about that. Alex talked about the way staff treated people. How does that compare to your experience at the halfway house? How long were you there?
That's 9 months.
9 months. Okay.
I should only have wished that I had such a beautiful experience as Alice did. Volunteers of America was
Which
also
is
a different.
which is the nonprofit that runs the Baltimore
Well, it's a
halfway house.
nonprofit organization that actually runs the halfway house contracted with the BOP.
Right.
So,
How would you describe the way they treated? What was the dynamics between people who stayed?
the dynamics is like you were treated less than humane. Like, and some of them actually spoke to you in a less than humane manner.
Like less than human, so
You
like
know,
what kids or something?
not even kids, like you're an animal or something, and several times I basically had to stand up for myself and be like, okay, hold on, wait a minute, this is not conducive to a professional environment. Like, I'm not going to allow you to talk to me like that. However, the flip side of that is when you complain, you're complaining to the BOP. So there's no real administrative remedy process or program that even actually remotely works. You literally have to call certain agents, who are actually BOP employees dealing with people who are actually contracted to work for them. So it was like a hit and miss kind of thing. If you didn't know how to articulate your needs to people who are in an upper echelon in the government, you basically didn't get any of your needs met.
So what do you have any thoughts about why staff do you think it was because they didn't care about their jobs? Was it because they were understaffed, under-resourced?
I think that was all the above. Like, a lot of them were frustrated. I even used to see little rifts between case management and security staff. Right. And then bar none, there is no medical staff on duty. So we're even so
How do you guys get your medicine?
the security pass it out to you. Like, they hold the medicine in this big case, and then they give it to you how they see fit to give it to you. You have KLP, which is keep on person, but then the other medicine that they're not too sure of that fits the BOP's description of maybe something that you need to take to be watched while you're taking it. They hand it out to you, and then that is so crazy because they don't know what they're doing. They're understaffed. They're uneducated about these medications.
Yeah, they're not trained.
They're not trained to do it. So, you may get your medicine when they feel like giving it to you. or you just may not get it.
Well, and so that's jumping ahead to one of the issues that you really had. I want to touch on two things. You'll notice that when Alex talked, he said there was no chaos. It was a stable, peaceful environment. And what struck me about a lot of things that you talked about was there was chaos because drugs were just rampant,
It,
right?
oh man, I remember times of like trying to get up and go to work. And so I get up at maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. That starts my day. But I can't even get into the bathroom to take care of my hygiene because there's people all over the place just stuck,
What do you mean by shut?
like stuck in a drug-induced, like comatose state. You know, you might have somebody body locked, holding toilet paper rolled up, you know, with a joint in their mouth, stuck, and they don't know that they're stuck. Or somebody literally swimming in their own vomit on the floor.
Now, what kind of drugs are we mostly talking about?
Or we're talking about K2. That was, and marijuana wasn't, that's more or less legal. But
And K2 is
the
to our
K2,
listeners who don't know what K2 is.
oh, K2 is
Some type of synthetic.
it's a synthetic marijuana that's supposed to be synthetic, not quite marijuana, because what it is it's supposed to be 100 times stronger than marijuana.
And I heard it really creates like a zombie like.
It
That's what you're talking about, stuck.
does, like,
Yeah.
the one time I had to call you early in the morning. I woke up to a guy just screaming, and it was crazy because he scared everybody. I snore like a lion. So, for me to hear that and wake up startled out of my sleep, and then this guy just got stark naked. Now, staff are standing here watching this man go crazy. They've called the paramedics. They're taking their time because they know that 9 times out of 10 is somebody wigged out on K2, and, uh, 9 times out of 10 is not really gonna be a whole much they can do for them, except for just wait for them to come down.
See, this is the point I wanted to bring up is that um the staff, as far as I know, weren't really trained. Like these are securities.
They're completely untrained for any type of
See,
medical emergency.
it seems to me what I think is really interesting here is that drugs are such a big problem. They are in prison too, but and they know it's such a big problem. Um, it seems to me like it would make sense to have some staff on site who could help in these emergencies when people
Absolutely.
are overdosing, or instead, what I always heard you say is these people, when they chose to step in, send them back to prison. Which
That was the only alternative. Like, and here's the thing. To make it more understandable, I actually had to be the one who had to calm this man down while the paramedics were on the way. So I had to literally physically hold this man for 45 minutes. That's how long they took. And not only was I scared, I didn't know what else to do. It was just like they're standing there just watching me the entire time, and watching him wig out like this. One thought it was funny. So
why not have some drug treatment on? It's very interesting. The Corrections Information Council, which is a DC agency that does some inspections at halfway houses and prisons, and I noticed that a comment they made when they had done an inspection to the VOA halfway house is they made the suggestion to the BOP, why not have emergency drug treatment staff on site, given the fact that it's such a huge problem. And the response I got from the BOP was, well, we have to expect the men to be able to have some responsibility for this. That's what the answer was. But addiction, as we know, is a disease, and it just seems that if they go back to prison, they're not going to get help there. That's one of the biggest barriers to reentry. Why not? I mean, they do have. I should clarify. They do have addiction services through Royal Well, say mental health services provider, but it's not on site. And
And their
you can't
substance
bring
abuse
in
is actually for state prisoners. Their substance abuse program is actually for Baltimore state prisoners too.
So it seems to me that I don't know what you think about this, but just seems
Well,
like why not have a more robust drug addiction program on site?
bro, what I think about it is that we do need more mental health professions, and we need to focus on mental health issues in those environments more because we're, I think we're ignoring the fact that we have individuals who are returning back into society who do have to go through and suffer these societal strains. So they have a lot on their plate. And that's a way, using drugs is a way for them to escape
Coping
this
mechanism.
reality.
Coping mechanism.
But for people like, the other thing I noticed that you used to tell me about, the effect they had on you, you're trying to get sleep because you have to get up very early for this job because you have to travel so far to get there. And yet you're sleeping in a dorm environment where the lights are on motion sensors.
Yes.
So people are going in and out all night long doing drugs. You can't go to sleep.
And not only that, you have the fact that just people are walking around you. Well, coming from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, first of all, at least you're in a locked cell. So once the door locked, it's like your comfort zone there. When you're at Volunteers of America, not only are the lights motion censored, so every time somebody goes in or comes out of a door, the lights turn on. Right? Not to mention the guys who might be in the room who still are stuck on dysfunctional behavior. That's for lack of any other word to use. I had to travel from Baltimore. Let me start. I'll say 3:45 in the morning, maybe 4 o'clock, and my journey doesn't stop until maybe 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then I was actually told that if I'm out more than 12 hours per day, that I would have to go onto a GPS monitor.
Want to explain what that is?
So the GPS monitor, global positioning monitor, which is actually how they track you
You were in your ankle.
on your ankle. And mind you, you cannot submerge this thing in water. You got to take a shower very carefully with it. And it's not a safe proof way to actually monitor people because the thing has so many different bugs with it. Like you might be in your bed sleeping, it'll say you're in Glebe, Maryland, and then they'll come back there and look and be like, oh, he's still in his bed, but you still got to go report to wherever, you could be at work. You could be maybe at one of the the organizations that we go to see, like Morca, Voice for a Second Chance, and it goes off. You actually have to go all the way back to Baltimore, or you're going to be sanctioned, which that could end up
No questions asked.
no questions asked.
So one thing you're getting into now that I think was, it's interesting because in a lot of ways the halfway house is a little bit like prison. And talk a little bit about the whole, you're having to go from Baltimore to DC in order to be allowed, because you have to get permission every single time you leave the halfway house. Explain the whole itinerary thing
Itinerary.
and what's involved getting an approved itinerary and how that can really mess up job opportunities.
Also, that is the itinerary. First of all, you have to get it approved by the BOP. And that can take it's supposed to only take 2 to 3 days.
And this is basically the daily plan, like where you plan to go and pick a
Where you going, what time you're going to be there,
to have everything.
how long you're going to be there, when you're going to leave, and when you're going to return. Now, it was amazing, huh?
How often do you have to file or put in one of these?
You have to do it 2 weeks ahead of time.
Wow.
So you have to sit down and literally ask yourself, well, what do I plan on doing in the next 2 weeks? And if it's not put in on time, you're not going anywhere. They don't care if you have to go to a meeting with Morca or volunteers, or they could care less. Because the first response is, well, if you don't like it here, you can always go back to prison.
Yeah.
So basically, there was examples though where, um, like I'm thinking of a situation you told me about where you'd gotten a job, they had told you that during the first 2 weeks you cannot miss any employment,
Oh,
but they had scheduled you for something
that was
else.
home chef.
Yeah, and how that
So
messed up the job.
after first of all, let me backtrack. I was working at the Hyatt DC National Mall. Because I was going out 12 hours per day or more, they wanted to put the global position monitor on me, which I refused. Because I told them, I feel like I'm back in the BOP all over again. I do not feel like I need to be tracked like that.
The Bureau of Prison.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean it's I guess ask sort of listeners if you were to think about this for a second.
Hmm.
I mean, how that would make you feel. You know, having to have this the large noticeable box
Yeah, you have to
It's-
find ways to cover it up.
on your leg that everybody can see.
And
You have
everybody sees this big
Look
lump
like-
on your leg. Like, what is this, a cyst? Or what do you got going on down here? So
So a lot of people wouldn't want to wear that.
It's almost like a chaperone, like a
it is. It is. And so when I refused it, they took all of my itineraries. The only place I could go was Royal Mines and doctor's appointments until I decided that I was going to actually cooperate in some type of manner. So what I chose to do was, go through different avenues. So I found
Get
a
a local-
job at home. Yeah, get a local job.
Get a Baltimore job.
Home chef. Home chef was absolutely beautiful. However, they have a very strict policy about being late, and they don't want to hear any type of excuses. So the BOP, in their infinite wisdom, decided they wanted to send me out to work an hour and a half late. Now, the policy already is that if you're still in the training phase, you can't miss more than 2 days of that training phase. You've already scheduled me for a doctor's appointment that took me away. And when I tried to get it corrected, you had time to correct it, but you refused to do so. Then the other time was you let me out at 5 o'clock in the morning when you know I need to actually be out of the halfway house by like 4:45, 4:30, maybe even 4 o'clock. So as an opposed to adjusting my schedules, you just say, look, here you go. We're just gonna kick you out at 5 o'clock in the morning. You can't leave the facility until 5 o'clock in the
You
morning.
cannot leave if they decide that is a mistake in your itinerary, or you cannot leave, and so you got to
And
work.
if you leave, then you're also gonna be held accountable for escape. From leaving a residential
the halfway house.
So he ended up losing his job.
yeah,
So let me ask you,
residential correction
do
center.
you believe that it was easier for you to have a job in Baltimore
It was.
opposed
It was
to DC?
because it was so much less I had to go through. Like it was
Sure.
right there in town, but then the old adage came right back because I was like, I give you an itinerary. You tell me you're going to put it in, but you put it in and adjust it how you see fit versus the time frame these people need me to be there. Right. And then when it's time for me to write an administrative remedy, the administrative remedies go right back to the people who work in Volunteers of America or straight to the people who actually run the contract.
Okay.
And that was a lot of that. Well, Pam, you remember that.
But see, what's interesting though, so even though he got a job in Baltimore, how long did it take you to get there?
It took me an hour and
See-
45 minutes
It's because
because it's clean across town. It's like, you know how uptown Northeast is like going to Southern Avenue.
Let's see, they wouldn't know that the views. But the thing is
It's
that
across the town.
Yeah, it's completely bad.
get a combination of all these different buses, and that's something.
And a subway.
Yeah,
And it still took you
And it still took me an hour and 45 minutes.
and that's the thing that the halfway house was refusing to be flexible about.
Yeah.
And it did not understand. He had to leave really early. He ended up getting there 15 minutes late one day, and they had shut the doors already. He was not allowed in.
They literally, security even tried to go in there and speak on my behalf. They was like, look, the man called us. Y'all don't have a contact number for him to be able to call you guys and let you guys know he's on his way, or that he may or may not be late.
I
Like,
can only imagine if someone's having to
there-
come to
there's-
DC.
oh,
Oh, yes. It's even like, this the thing is, that's where like people think that I even talk to guys in prison who don't realize this, that they think they're going to be free. They're not, because if you were free, you could say, I'm going to leave this early. I'm going to leave at this time, so I'll be there in time. But no, you cannot leave when you want to leave. You have to wait until they allow you to leave.
not only do you have to wait until they allow you to leave, you also see there's also another situation that's involved in this too. Like when you get up so early in the morning, the cafeteria isn't open. So you're missing breakfast.
meals.
You're missing meals. Your work schedule, if it's past 6:30, you're missing dinner,
Dinner, right?
right? And then they'll tell you to sign up for a meal, but by the time you come back, half the time the meals are either ice cold or you just don't get one because they ran out. And you're not allowed to stop, especially if you have a GPS monitor. You are not allowed to stop over at McDonald's
Oh, wow.
or anywhere else outside of your itinerary to get anything to eat,
And the other thing,
because you're going to get written up for it.
the other reason why he missed a day at work is because they had to schedule a doctor's appointment and weren't willing to reschedule it.
Yeah.
They said, no, you're going to go to the doctor's appointment instead of work.
A
That is
doctor's
what a parent
appointment-
does with a child.
A doctor's appointment that I had missed previously for the exact same reason.
Oh, wow.
So it's like you can't make the smallest decisions for yourself. See, to me, if a halfway house is really designed to help you prepare for independent living, you wouldn't take away the ability to make the smallest decisions for yourself. They are still insisting on making the decisions for you. The other thing I would say that people have to realize is that in prison, medical care is really bad. You may be seriously ill, you may need certain exams, and you'll have to wait months to get it. And by that time, your disease might be very progressed. So you'd sort of hope or think that medical care would be better in the halfway house.
Wow.
And yet, you alluded to it before
Yes.
when you said that you didn't get the medication that you needed.
No, I remember,
Yeah.
what was it, from November to the first part of November to the second half of December, I went without my mental health medication.
And this is psychiatric medication that you really is not the-
Psychotropic medication that you can't just stop, because if you just stop it, I could go into seizures,
Oh, wow.
which I don't even have, those type of problems that, but if you just cold turkey taking people off of it,
They just didn't have the refill button.
they didn't have the refill. And then every time they put the refill in, my case manager might put the refill in, but the BOP tell her, oh no, it's too soon for him to get this medication, even though I'm out of it. And it's only, I'm not before the time that I'm supposed to get another prescription. It's just, you just want to take the authority that you have and abuse it. Like, then I was sick with I didn't know I had RSV, first of all. So also, while I'm waiting for my medication, I'm going through the symptoms of RSV. I'm thinking I've got a flu or maybe pneumonia or something. So finally, I got so mad when I came back from work and off of a holiday, I think it was Thanksgiving. When I came back 2 weeks later, I was like, y'all, I was still trying to figure out when y'all gonna schedule me to go to the hospital, or when you're gonna just send me. So finally, I actually had to call Miss Eubanks, who oversees the contract for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Miss Rachel Eubanks was somewhat amenable to let me go, but I had to wait for her to approve it before they would let me go to Mercy Medical.
The hospital.
Right. So it was because you have the knowledge of what you have a right to and what you would not allow. These people take the mentality that, oh, well, we're going to make it much more difficult for this individual just because he knows what he's talking about and he actually has outside support who will actually call in and question, you're like, what are y'all doing? And I think that was the only thing saved me from getting sent back to prison.
And what was that?
The outside support.
Having other people who
Having other
call.
people, yeah, what they can call.
Darnell went with 3 weeks without medication. This is not like cold medication. It's not like indigestion medication. This is mental health medication that you cannot go without. You will decompensate without it. And I mean, I was even calling.
Yeah, that's what I was ready to ask you.
I couldn't
What
understand why.
did your outside help comprise?
Well, I mean, I was calling University Legal, another nonprofit call.
Yeah.
I mean, this.
Were those institutions in D.C.?
Yes.
Yeah. But
University Legal
crazy to me
Disability
that-
Rights DC.
Again, though, you're totally out of control of your own healthcare.
Yeah.
And they wait, and it seems like, and nobody really seemed to care. In fact, the other thing, like prison, was they were getting mad at me. They were getting mad at him. They're getting mad at me for, why are you making
intervening?
trouble?
Yeah.
You're making trouble.
Good
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's your health. It's
Yeah.
your health.
How about that?
But so I think that's sort of the the message about the halfway house is that it's really not preparing people. Like I know of other people who are at the halfway house who have decided not to even try to get a job because they know that they may end up. May end up losing it. I mean, Darnell lost like 3 different jobs because of the halfway house, the restrictions. And think about this: if you're coming out of prison and you're trying to build up confidence in yourself and a track record. The last thing you want is to lose, your first experience, and you get fired. So I'm thinking of somebody else who's there now who decided, you know what, I'm going to wait until I'm out before I even try to get a job. And then you wonder, then what's the
And that defeats the purpose of what
It really does.
of what the halfway house is supposed to serve. And that's helping you get a job.
Yeah. It's helping you reintegrate back into society in a successful manner. Like to know that you've made it that close to being back into society, and then it just turned into total chaos, and you have no control of what's going on. Like I actually told them to send me back to the BOP.
Yeah, and that's
Y'all don't want to take care of me. Go on, send me back to the BOP.
And that's why a lot of people don't even want to go to the halfway house.
I didn't want to go to the halfway house.
Because
But rather than be at FCI Fairton, New Jersey, I said, I'm going to go ahead and go to Baltimore right now. And I'm going to see if I can make this work.
The ones who want to go are the ones who haven't heard. I mean, I can't tell you how many DC people I've talked to who are, I can't wait to get to the halfway house. And I told them, I warned them. And they said, no, I'll be different. I know how to work the system. And then I said, I give you 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
And then they'll be singing the same tune. So I guess there's an opportunity coming up. So I mean, there's 2 things I just to sum up what we heard. One is the way people are treated. They want to be treated with dignity and respect and learn, because in prison that's sort of taken away from you already. In fact, I worked with some other people who have a hard time making decisions for themselves because they've been taught not to in prison. So they need to be treated like adults so they can relearn how to take charge of their own lives. They're not being allowed to. And then there's just services that aren't helping you get a job. They're not helping you get housing. So then what's the point? So is T, DC, I say DC, but it's really the BOP. Is
getting a new halfway house.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? What do we know about it?
Well, it's a hole in the ground right now. I mean, they had a opening date for last November, 2023, and it's a hole in the ground, and it's like it's not even being built.
Mm,
So they're giving us misinformation on when the Happy House is supposed to be built for DC
okay.
residents.
But when it eventually comes, I guess let me ask you, Darnell, knowing you with your experience that you've had, now you're out, and we'll talk about that later. If you had an opportunity to talk to this, the new Halfway House will also be run by, I don't know if they're not, I think not for profit or a company.
I think it is,
Not for profit?
no, I'm
Or
not
for
sure.
profit. It's going to be an organization, an outside organization that's going to contract with the BOP. If you had the opportunity to sit down with somebody, a representative for this organization that'll run the DC Halfway House when it opens, what would you tell them about, hey, make sure you do what?
Are we talking before that? Are we talking about the Halfway House in general, or just nonprofit organizations that's going to be working?
No, I guess what I'm asking him is if you had the opportunity to talk to someone who's going to be running this new Halfway House,
Okay.
what, and then I want to get your opinion. What advice or what request would you make? Well, how could they do better?
First of all, they need people who are going to be more benevolent to the people who are actually in need of the halfway house. There's a way to get your point across to someone without being disrespectful and antagonistic. But then above all and beyond everything else, we need adequate housing. We need adequate vocational training programs. This actually going to target the skills that you have. We actually need housing being made available to people.
Now, are you saying that you think the Halfway House should be doing that?
The halfway house should be doing that because they're actually the go-between between you and your next step back into society. And if it's being done ahead of time before your projected release date is, then you will be 9 times out of 10 that much more successful because the steps that you have to wait to do, like you have to wait to get SNAP benefits, or should I say government benefits, government assistance. You have to wait till you're out of the halfway house. By that time, you're on the street, you're just pushed out the door with no resources whatsoever.
So they would tell you that, oh, well, the nonprofits, city organizations should do that for you. That it's not the job of the BOP to act, but the BOP run Halfway House to do that.
Well, that should be the job because that is one of the things that's needed. Those are like primary things that are needed.
What do you think about that, Eddie? So he's sort of saying, I will say, and we'll get into this in the next part of the second series in this podcast, but it does seem like one thing that I see all the time is that the people come into the Halfway House, and when it comes to getting a job, getting housing, getting signed up for benefits, is they are basically, they hear about these different services in DC, and they're like a little hamster almost.
You get to run.
Let's go here, let's go here, let's go here. They're running around to all the agencies trying to figure out
Who can help them?
And
who can help and which one's the best one, and it does seem like that's so inefficient. Because maybe you won't hear about somebody, and there's 3 agencies that do the same thing. Which one's better? And so they just run around all the time. What do you think about that? Should there be something in the Halfway House that coordinates it all, or what?
It should be something in the Happy House that brings all of these organizations together to be able to assist the returning citizen.
Why don't you talk about your experience a little bit? Because you didn't go to the Halfway House, but you did
Yeah, I did.
have to figure out. Well, we're going to get into housing later, so let's not talk
Yeah,
about that. But
okay.
you had to figure out which services to go to.
Yeah, because, as everyone know, I am a returning citizen as well. And I had to experience going through a transitional home. And that transitional home was assisted to me through, it was supposed to be through my probation officer, federal probation officer, and it wasn't. They was trying to send me to Richmond, Virginia, where I told my probation officer at the time that no, I'm not moving to no Richmond,
That's like how
Virginia.
far away? That was like
It's almost like an hour and a half.
yeah.
So I told her, oh, if you need an address for me, it's going to be on one of these corners, and you just come meet me there, because I'm not going to Richmond, Virginia. So I did go to Morca.
And it's the mayor's office.
Mayor
And he says,
office of
although
citizen.
other people take the M off and call it
Orca.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did occur to me that one of the ideas that I was thinking about is rather than making people run all over the place to different agencies, figuring out who can offer me what, why not have a space in the halfway house, or maybe once a month, say twice a month, all those agencies have a table or something, so you don't have to go, because think of the transportation, especially now if you're coming from Baltimore, it's even a bigger problem. But why not at least, I can see why the BOP might say, well, we can't actually have people on staff that does all that for you, but why not, you said coordinating it, why not have have them all have offices there or something in the halfway house?
And that sounds promising. That sounds like something that we need in the halfway house.
Or the other idea that I had was, because you all go through this, I mean, and you now know which agencies were good for you and which not, and why not have returned citizens who had been through it go in maybe twice a month and appear, it could be peer to peer, saying, hey,
Yeah.
And after the one thing we didn't mention, by the way, that I think is really important, is money. Everybody has no money. So before you have a job, you don't have family giving you some cash.
You're hit.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're hit.
And those are some of the societal strains I was talking about, as to why you might see people feel the need to want to escape
Right.
using drugs.
Yeah.
So
Well, so I think, why don't we wrap up this, and then in the sort of what I consider sort of the second part, but the next podcast episode, we're going to talk about housing specifically, because that is the need that I hear about more than anything.
anything else.
But we can wrap this one up. Is that I think there's a huge potential. Halfway houses could be so helpful in helping people get used to the idea of being independent. It just doesn't seem like, and some of them do. Some of them are pretty good. But we just heard today about an example of how wrong it can go. And there's lots of ways it could do better. And we hope the new DC house, when it finally opens, will be. But yeah, so listen to the next episode. You'll hear more about the housing situation. And meanwhile, please subscribe so that you'll know when that new episode is out.